think about like the exact moment you're sitting across from a car salesman, right? And he slides that piece of paper across the desk with a number circled in red ink.
Oh, yeah, the classic move.
Right. Or maybe you're opening an email from your landlord and the subject line just says lease renewal terms. And before you even read the actual number, your heart rate spikes. Your palms get a little damp.
Absolutely. It's a physical reaction.
It really is. Like every single clever talking point you practiced in the shower that morning completely evaporates from your brain. You just want that uncomfortable feeling to stop.
Well, and that visceral physiological reaction is totally universal.
Yeah.
I mean, we experience a genuine threat response when confronted with a financial conflict.
Wait, really? Like a literal threat response?
Yeah, exactly. The brain registers the interpersonal friction of a negotiation almost identically to physical danger, which is precisely why the vast majority of us would rather, just accept a subpar deal than endure the agonizing discomfort of pushing back.
That makes so much sense. Well, welcome to the deep dive. Today, our mission is to completely rewire how you approach that exact moment of panic. We're talking about the clash for cash, the haggle.
Bargaining hard.
Exactly. We're cracking open an extensive, field-tested guide from a seasoned negotiation expert today. And the goal is to fundamentally change your perspective on all of this. Because whether you're buying a vehicle, negotiating your rent, or just, trying to secure a fair rate for your freelance services, most of us completely wimp out when it comes to the actual exchange of numbers.
We do. We really do.
So we're going to give you the psychological architecture to become a confident, highly effective negotiator.
And, the foundational error we make, the main reason we wimp out so consistently is that we totally misunderstand the medium we're operating in.
How so?
Well, we treat bargaining like it's a math problem. We step into the room believing the interaction is about logic or percentages or finding a perfectly rational middle ground on a spreadsheet.
Right, like trying to balance an equation.
Exactly. But bargaining is not math. It's entirely about uncovering the riptide.
Ah, the riptide. That is such a vivid image. Because a riptide is invisible from the surface of the water, isn't it?
It's completely invisible. But it's also the most dangerous part of the ocean. I mean, if you're swimming and you get caught in a riptide, you can paddle as hard as you want against it, but the current will simply drag you out to sea.
Man. So how does that apply to sitting at a desk with a contract?
Well, in a negotiation, that riptide represents the unseen psychological currents, the things pulling both sides beneath the surface of the conversation. Skilled bargainers, they don't fixate on the superficial opening offers.
Right. They're not just looking at the surface waves.
Exactly. They are reading the water. They're looking for those deep emotional currents, the underlying fears, the anxieties, the desperate needs, and the hardwired behavioral habits of the person sitting right across the table.
Okay, so to really understand how to read that water in a high-stakes, real-world setting, our source material offers this masterclass example. Let's just dive right into the anecdote about a very specific, very red truck.
Ah, yes. The famous Toyota 4Runner negotiation.
It's such a great story.
It really is. It perfectly illustrates the difference between fighting the surface waves and manipulating the riptide underneath.
So picture the scenario for a second. Our author, who happens to be a literal master negotiator, falls completely head over heels for a Toyota 4Runner. But he doesn't just want any standard model, right?
No, of course not.
He's obsessed with this highly specific color called Salsa Red Pearl. He actually describes it in the text as a smoldering red that seemed to glow in the dark. Like, he simply has to have this exact truck.
Which honestly introduces the single greatest vulnerability a buyer can have.
Because he cares too much.
Yes, he has surrendered his emotional detachment. He's no longer objective.
Right. He's incredibly compromised. So he spends days searching all the dealership inventories in the entire metropolitan Washington, D.C. area, and he realizes he has a severe supply problem.
The worst kind of problem.
Exactly. There are no Salsa Red Pearl 4Runners anywhere in the region, except for one. Just one single truck sitting on one single lot. So the stakes are instantly sky high. He has absolutely zero alternatives if he walks away from this specific dealership.
And he even notes that doing this is like going to the grocery store when you haven't eaten in 2 days. He's starving for this vehicle.
Yeah, that's a dangerous place to be.
Very dangerous. Because dealerships, and specifically experienced car salespeople, they are highly trained predators when it comes to spotting that exact kind of hunger.
Oh, for sure.
They look for the gleam in the eye. They watch how you touch the steering wheel. I mean, they know when you've mentally already parked the car in your driveway.
And he knows this. But he drives to the dealership anyway on a sunny Friday afternoon. He sits down across the desk from the salesman, a seasoned veteran named Stan. And our buyer actually starts the conversation by praising the car, going on and on about how gorgeous the vehicle is.
Right, he's just laying it all out there.
Exactly. So Stan is sitting there, probably doing mental calculations on his commission, thinking he has a completely captive buyer. Stan gives the standard, confident salesman smile and drops the sticker price on the desk. $36,000.
Now let's just freeze the frame here, because this is the critical juncture.
The moment the heart rate spikes.
Exactly. This is the moment. Most ordinary people in this situation will do one of two things. They'll either nod submissively and try to negotiate, like a free set of floor mats, or they'll swing wildly in the other direction.
Right, adopting the tough guy posture, aggressively demanding a few $1,000s off to prove they aren't a sucker.
But our buyer does neither of those things. He leans forward, gives Stan a very understanding nod, and just purses his lips thoughtfully.
Yeah, the text states his internal goal is to rattle the salesman, but to do it gently, like in the kindest, most apologetic way conceivable.
Yes. So he looks at Stan, making warm eye contact, and delivers this exact phrasing. He says, I can pay $30,000, and I can pay it up front, all cash. I'll write a check today for the full amount.
And then the kicker.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm afraid I just can't pay anymore.
Wow. The contrast here is what makes the tactic so devastating, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. He drops a massive financial anchor. I mean, $6,000 below the sticker price, which is an insulting lowball in the car business.
A huge lowball.
But he wraps that insult in total interpersonal deference. It's an extreme financial blow, but it does not trigger a defensive reflex because it just doesn't feel like a personal attack.
Right, so Stan's confident smile visibly flickers, like he's completely thrown off rhythm. He tightens his posture and delivers a classic dealership pushback. He says, I'm sure you understand we can't do that. The sticker price is $36,000 after all.
And here is where the buyer utilizes a specific tool that we really need to define for the listener.
The calibrated question.
Yes, he uses a calibrated question. He looks at Stan, still radiating apologies, and asks, how am I supposed to do that?
Let's pause and unpack the mechanics of a calibrated question because, it seems like a subtle shift in language, but the source material treats it like a literal superpower.
It absolutely is a superpower.
Yeah.
So a calibrated question is an open-ended inquiry, almost exclusively beginning with the words how or what.
Okay, so no why or can you.
Right. Crucially, it avoids verbs like can, is, or do, which simply result in a definitive yes or no answer. When you ask a closed-ended question, you're essentially creating a wall.
That makes sense.
But when you ask a calibrated question, you create an open door. But here's the trick. You are the one designing the frame of that door. By asking, how am I supposed to do that?
Yeah.
The buyer is performing this brilliant psychological maneuver.
It feels like he's asking the salesman to solve his own objection, like, help me figure out how to pay you less.
That is the exact mechanism. He is not saying, no, I refuse to pay your price, because that would create opposition. Instead, he's communicating, I am powerless to meet your demand. Can you please use your expertise to solve this insurmountable problem for me?
Wow.
Right. It forces the counterpart, in this case, Stan, to pause his aggressive sales pitch and step into the buyer's shoes for a moment. It transfers the heavy cognitive labor of the negotiation right onto the salesman's shoulders.
All while giving the salesman the illusion that he's still in control of the conversation.
Exactly. The illusion of control is key.
And we see it work immediately on Stan. Like, he stammers a bit, the script is broken, he tries to pivot, suggesting, I'm sure we can figure something out with financing. But the buyer refuses to take the financing bait.
He doubles down on the extreme deference.
Yeah, he says, it's a beautiful truck. It is undoubtedly worth more than what I'm offering. I'm sorry, this is really embarrassing for me. I just can't do that price. And this is the crazy part. The buyer just stops talking. He goes completely silent.
The agonizing, crushing weight of intentional silence.
Honestly, reading the description of this silence actually made me uncomfortable. He just sits there in the chair. Stan stares at him, waiting for the inevitable compromise. But the buyer offers nothing.
Nothing at all.
Finally, the silence breaks Stan. He physically stands up and escapes to the manager's back room. The buyer notes that Stan was gone for what felt like an eternity. Sitting alone, the buyer even starts experiencing self-doubt, thinking to himself, damn, I should have come in even lower. They're going to come all the way down to my number.
Which is funny, but the buyer recognizes a core tenet of advanced bargaining in that moment. Any response from a seller that is not a flat, unequivocal no means the buyer retains the leverage.
Right. If they're in the back room discussing your absurd offer, you're winning.
Exactly.
So Stan eventually emerges. He announces, with, the forced enthusiasm of someone handing out a grand prize, that his boss has graciously okayed a price of $34,000. Now, I want to inject an analogy here to contrast this approach with how most of us view haggling.
Oh, I love this analogy. Go for it.
Usually, a negotiation feels like a high-stakes game of chicken. You picture two cars speeding toward each other on a narrow, single-lane bridge. Both drivers are flashing their high beams, leaning on the horn, trying to intimidate the other person into swerving first. And the first person to swerve loses.
Right, that is the traditional, aggressive, confrontational model. It relies entirely on force and fear.
But in this scenario, the buyer didn't speed toward the salesman. He didn't even rev his engine. He essentially turned his car off, threw his keys out the window into the river, slumped down in his seat, and just sat there apologizing. "I'm so sorry, my car simply will not move. I am so embarrassed to be blocking your way."
It's brilliant.
And yet, somehow, doing absolutely nothing forces the other driver to do all the work of navigating around him. Let's dig into the psychological mechanics of why doing nothing is so incredibly effective.
Well, it's effective because the buyer is weaponizing the salesman's internal anxiety, along with the immense social pressure of a vacuum. Let's examine the neuroscience and psychology at play here.
Okay, let's hear it.
When you aggressively attack a salesperson's price, when you speed your car toward theirs, you trigger their innate fight-or-flight response. Their ego becomes engaged. They feel a biological imperative to defend their territory, which in this case is their pricing structure.
Right, they have to fight back.
But when you offer extreme deference, when you repeatedly affirm that their product is beautiful and worth the money, but state that you are simply incapable of paying it, you completely remove the threat. There is nothing for their ego to fight against.
It's a conversational equivalent of trying to punch smoke. Like your fist just sails right through.
A perfect description. You have created an emotional vacuum. And human beings, especially individuals in sales professions who are fundamentally driven by the need to maintain momentum and close deals, absolutely despise a vacuum.
So the silence is actually painful for them.
Yes. The prolonged silence becomes physically intolerable for Stan. The buyer is not aggressively rejecting him. The buyer is just failing to comply due to a stated embarrassing inability. Therefore, Stan's own anxiety rushes in to fill that silent void.
Wow.
He feels an overwhelming internal compulsion to solve the problem, just to relieve the awkwardness and keep the deal breathing.
And we see that internal compulsion completely dismantles Stan over the next hour.
Yeah.
After Stan offers the $34,000 compromise, the buyer praises him lavishly. "Wow, your offer is so generous. This is truly the car of my dreams. I really wished I could do that. This is so embarrassing. I simply can't."
It's brutal.
And then he drops the silent anchor again. He refuses to meet Stan in the middle.
Which requires immense discipline. I mean, the overwhelming social instinct for an average person in that chair is to alleviate the tension by saying, let's just split the difference at $32,000.
Right, just to make it stop. But he holds the line. So Stan, visibly defeated, trudges back to the manager's office. He returns after another eternity and says, "You win. My manager okayed $32,500. He even slides a piece of paper across the desk that has the words, "You win," written on it, complete with hand-drawn smiley faces.
Yeah, that is a fascinating psychological trick from the dealership's playbook. They are attempting to manufacture a sense of triumph for the buyer.
Oh, really? It's a trick.
Oh, totally. They want to trigger the buyer's ego, hoping the buyer feels like they just scored a massive victory over the house, which usually prompts them to finally sign the paperwork.
But the buyer's completely immune to the theater. He hits Stan with the exact same deferential, immovable wall. "I am so deeply grateful. You've been incredibly generous with your time. The truck is without a doubt worth more than my price. I am so sorry. I just can't do that."
And that's the final blow.
Yep. Stan's manufactured smile just vanishes. He is thoroughly befuddled. He turns around, walks back to his manager, and a minute later he reappears and simply says, "We can do that." 2 days later, the buyer drives off the lot in his dream Salsa Red Pearl 4Runner for $30,000 flat. He saves $6,000 by doing almost nothing but apologizing and weaponizing silence.
The execution is flawless.
Oh.
However, if we zoom out to the broader application of these tools, we really have to issue a severe warning to anyone listening who wants to try this tomorrow.
Uh-oh. There's always a catch. What is the danger here?
Well, the danger lies in the assumption of universal application. The silent treatment, the extreme deference, the calibrated questions, they worked with surgical precision on Stan.
Right.
But if you take that exact same playbook and run it against a different personality type, it won't just fail. It could catastrophically blow the deal out of the water.
Wait, I'm struggling to see why. I mean, if the psychological pressure of the vacuum is a universal human trait, shouldn't the agonizing silence work on everyone eventually?
The discomfort of the vacuum might be common, but the interpretation of that vacuum is wildly divergent. How a person experiences your silence depends entirely on their hardwiring.
Okay, that makes sense.
Which brings us to the absolute foundational step of preparation for any negotiation, or frankly, any difficult conversation. You must diagnose the specific psychological profile of the person sitting across from you.
Ah, okay. The source material dedicates a massive amount of real estate to this concept, introducing a phenomenon that honestly reframed how I view all my relationships. It's called the I am normal paradox.
Oh, I love this concept. I would argue it's the single most destructive cognitive bias we carry into our interpersonal dynamics.
Seriously. The I am normal paradox is the deeply ingrained, completely subconscious belief that the rest of the world experiences reality exactly the way we do. We assume our emotional reactions, our pacing, our communication preferences, and our fears are the default setting for the human race.
Yes.
We subconsciously think, well, I am a normal person, so this other person must process data and emotions exactly the way I do.
And when you carry that assumption to a bargaining table, it acts as a silent killer of deals. It results in the greatest fallacy taught in communication courses, which is the misapplication of the golden rule.
The golden rule, like treat others the way you want to be treated. How can a moral absolute like that be wrong?
Well, in the context of negotiation, it is a disastrous strategy. Because if you treat someone the way you prefer to be treated, you are forcefully projecting your version of normal onto them.
Oh, wow. I never thought about it like that.
Yeah, and the research cited in our source suggests there is a roughly 66% statistical probability that your counterpart's definition of normal is fundamentally opposed to yours.
So the paradigm shifts from treat others the way you want to be treated to treat others the way they require to be treated.
Precisely. You must abandon your native tongue and speak their behavioral language. And to accomplish that, you have to be able to categorize them quickly.
And our source material does this. It distills decades of behavioral research, field hostage experience, and academic case studies into 3 distinct negotiator profiles, right?
Yes, the analyst, the accommodator, and the assertive.
Let's explore these 3 profiles in depth, because recognizing these patterns is honestly like being handed a cheat code for human interaction. I want to begin with the first category, the analyst. Walk me through the inner workings of an analyst.
Okay, so the analyst is the embodiment of method and diligence. They are allergic to rushing. For an analyst, their core self-image is inextricably tied to accuracy and minimizing mistakes. They want to get the details perfect, regardless of the effort required.
How does that obsession with accuracy affect their relationship with time? Because in haggling, the clock is usually a massive leverage point.
That's the thing. For the analyst, the clock simply does not exist. Their internal motto is, it takes as much time as it takes to get it right.
Wow. Good luck pressuring them.
Exactly. You cannot pressure them into a hasty decision using artificial deadlines. They are frequently classic introverts who derive energy from working in isolation. They detest surprises at the table. An analyst will happily spend 3 weeks researching the microscopic details of a contract just to ensure they are never caught off guard by a new piece of data.
I have colleagues who fit this profile perfectly. Like, they speak very deliberately. They pause before answering even simple questions.
Yes, and because of that deliberate pacing, their tone can often be misinterpreted by others as distant, aloof, or even clinically cold. But they aren't intentionally being standoffish. They are just prioritizing data over warmth.
Right.
Now, if you are dealing with an analyst, there is one crucial quirk you must memorize. They are acutely, almost painfully, sensitive to reciprocity.
Okay. What does that look like in the middle of a conversation?
It means they view every single interaction as a carefully audited ledger of data exchange. Remember, they prefer working alone. The mere fact that they've agreed to sit at a table and speak with you is, in their mind, a significant concession.
Interesting.
So if they supply you with a piece of information, they expect an equally valuable piece of information in return. If you hoard your data, they will instantly lose trust. They won't yell or cause a scene. They will just quietly disengage.
Oh, so you might assume the meeting is going splendidly because there's no conflict.
Exactly. But the analyst checked out 20 minutes ago because the data flow was asymmetrical.
Wow. Let's apply our car dealership strategy to the analyst. If I use Stan's nightmare, that agonizing, drawn-out silence on an analyst, what is their internal reaction?
To an analyst, silence is not a vacuum of anxiety. Silence is a gift. It is an opportunity to think. They do not feel the social pressure that Stan felt.
Oh, that completely flips the script.
It does. If you deliver a lowball offer and go completely mute, the analyst will simply sit there staring at the wall, happily running the mathematical permutations in their head. They aren't furious with you. They genuinely believe you are just being polite by giving them the necessary quiet time to evaluate the data. You could sit there for an hour and they would be perfectly content.
Okay, that drastically changes the playbook. Let's pivot to the second profile, which feels like the polar opposite of the analyst, the accommodator.
Yes, the accommodator is the social connective tissue of the business world. They are deeply friendly, highly optimistic, and easily distractible. They are intoxicated by the concept of a win-win resolution.
So the relationship is everything.
Yes. Their paramount objective, above money or terms, is to ensure they remain on fantastic personal terms with their counterpart.
So for an accommodator, time is measured differently.
Absolutely. For them, time spent fostering the relationship is time exquisitely spent. As long as there is a joyful, free-flowing exchange of dialogue, they are fulfilled. They genuinely want to know about your life.
So they're the ones you want to chat about your weekend before getting to business.
Precisely. An accommodator will happily consume the first 45 minutes of a one-hour contract negotiation discussing your children's soccer leagues, your recent vacation, and your favorite restaurants.
The source material highlights a rather humorous but dangerous vulnerability regarding accommodators. It states they are the most likely of all three profiles to build spectacular world-class rapport while accomplishing absolutely nothing of substance.
It is a frequent pitfall.
Yeah.
Because their terror of interpersonal conflict is so profound, they will actively avoid addressing contentious issues. Their desire to appease is a massive blind spot.
Like they'll promise things they can't deliver.
Oh, all the time. An accommodator might even verbally agree to concessions they have no authority to grant, simply to keep the interaction pleasant and avoid the friction of saying the word no to your face.
Yikes. Now, contrast the analyst's view of silence with the accommodators. If I use the intentional silence tactic on an accommodator, what happens?
This is where the tactic becomes radioactive. To an accommodator, a sudden cessation of conversation equals anger.
Oh, they panic.
Instantly. If the dialogue stops, their internal monologue spirals into panic. They immediately assume they have committed a grave social offense, that the relationship is fundamentally fractured, and that you are seething with rage. They'll often bid against themselves just to get you to start talking and smiling again.
Man, that's wild. Which brings us to the third and final category, which the author candidly admits is his own native behavioral style, the assertive.
Yes, the assertive is the archetypal, fiery competitor. They are propelled by the thrill of winning. They're blunt, incredibly candid, and frequently employ an aggressive, rapid-fire communication style.
So they aren't worried about being your best friend.
Not at all. They do not lose sleep over the prospect of future interactions. They are hyper-focused on securing the victory in the present moment. To an assertive, business relationships are forged strictly on mutual respect and competence, not warmth.
And how do they perceive the ticking clock?
Time is money. Every minute spent meandering is capital destroyed. For an assertive profile, getting a deal finalized quickly is exponentially more valuable than getting the details perfect. They are the mirror opposite of the analyst in their tolerance for imperfection.
Now, there's a psychological quirk attributed to the assertive that I found deeply profound. The text argues that they literally lack the cognitive capacity to listen to your arguments until they are absolutely certain you have heard theirs.
That is the key to unlocking an assertive. They are consumed by a desperate need to be heard and validated. Their communication style is heavily weighted toward telling rather than asking.
So you can't just jump in with your counteroffer right away.
No, if you are negotiating with an assertive, presenting your logical counterarguments early is a waste of breath. Their ears are functionally closed. You must focus entirely on absorbing their perspective first.
How do you do that?
You have to reflect their statements back to them, summarize their worldview, and label their emotions until they physically nod and say, "That's right." Only after they feel comprehensively understood will the neurological lock turn, allowing their brain to process your point of view.
And their relationship with silence.
To an assertive, silence is an open microphone. It is an invitation to speak more. An assertive only goes quiet when they have entirely depleted their reservoir of thoughts.
Okay, let me set up a hypothetical scenario because combining these profiles seems like a recipe for constant disaster. I'm looking back at my own career and I can vividly remember a specific failure.
Well, let's hear it.
I was operating as an assertive. I was pitching a project, speaking quickly, being very direct. The client across the table was clearly an analyst. I finished my aggressive pitch and I paused, purely because I needed to catch my breath and gather my next thought. The analyst sat there in complete silence.
Uh-oh. I see where this is going.
Right. In my assertive brain, I viewed their silence as an invitation to keep dominating the floor, so I launched right back into talking. Meanwhile, the analyst was probably sitting there thinking, I just need 30 seconds to run the numbers, and this obnoxious guy refuses to stop interrupting my thought process. I completely derailed the meeting because I misread the silence.
That is a textbook cross-cultural collision. It happens in boardrooms thousands of times a day. You are operating according to your normal, and they were filtering your behavior through their normal. The resulting friction destroys trust.
Or consider the inverse. What if I am an analyst negotiating with an accommodator? I deliver a piece of data and then go completely silent, intending to give them respectful space to process. The accommodator experiences that silence, instantly panics, assumes I am furious with their proposal, and begins profusely apologizing and offering unnecessary discounts just to repair the perceived emotional damage.
Exactly. The misinterpretations are endless and costly.
So, what is the practical solution? Do I need to adopt a completely fabricated personality to perfectly mirror whoever is across the table? Because maintaining a fake persona during a stressful negotiation sounds mentally exhausting and highly prone to slipping.
Faking it is a terrible strategy. The objective is to remain authentic to your core self, but to actively supplement your native strengths with borrowed tools. You need the emotional agility to throttle up your non-dominant traits when the environment demands it.
Okay.
And before anyone assumes they need to become an aggressive alpha to succeed, we must address how pop culture has completely warped our perception of effective bargaining.
Oh, for sure. We all picture the Gordon Gekko Wall Street stereotype, right? The guy pounding his fist on the mahogany table, screaming demands, and intimidating the opposition into submission.
Hollywood loves the assertive archetype because it is dramatic. But empirical data paints a radically different picture. The source cites a comprehensive study evaluating American lawyer negotiators across two major metropolitan areas.
What did they find?
They categorized the attorneys' styles and found that 65% utilized a cooperative approach, meaning their dominant traits aligned with accommodators or analysts. Only 24% were categorized as truly assertive.
Wow.
However, the critical revelation came when they evaluated the actual success rates of these lawyers. When isolating the most highly effective negotiators, over 75% of that elite group belonged to the cooperative categories. A staggering 12% the most effective group were assertive.
That statistic is mind-blowing, only 12%. So, blunt, table-pounding assertion is actually a statistical disadvantage most of the time.
It creates unnecessary resistance. So if you are listening to this and you identify as a natural accommodator, do not view your aversion to conflict as a fatal flaw. Your inherent likability is a massive strategic advantage.
You just have to learn how to say no.
Exactly. You simply need to consciously practice holding your boundaries so you do not sacrifice your core requirements just to maintain peace. If you are an analyst, your rigorous preparation is your superpower, but you must remember to intentionally smile and engage in small talk so you do not alienate people with a robotic demeanor.
And if you're an assertive...
If you are a natural assertive, your task is the most difficult. You must intentionally soften your vocal tone, slow your cadence, and aggressively force yourself to ask questions instead of issuing demands.
Okay, so we have established our own normal, and we possess the diagnostic tools to decode the counterpart sitting across the table. The psychological groundwork is laid. Now, we must transition to the phase of the negotiation that truly induces the cold sweats.
Ah, yes. The actual exchange of numbers, the moment of truth.
Exactly. This is where abstract theory is tested against raw human reaction. And to properly set the stage for this, we need to dismantle a deeply entrenched academic myth. What is taught in elite business schools regarding bargaining is frequently entirely divorced from the chaotic reality of human interaction. I want to discuss the concept of ZUPE.
ZUPA, the zone of possible agreement. It is a staple of every MBA curriculum.
The concept of Zupé frames a negotiation as a perfectly rational mathematical overlap. Like, the theory dictates that there is a seller's absolute floor and a buyer's absolute ceiling.
Right.
For example, if I'm selling a piece of heavy machinery, my internal spreadsheet says I absolutely will not accept less than $50,000. You are the buyer, and your budget dictates you cannot pay a penny more than $60,000. Therefore, the ZOOPay, the logical zone where a deal can be struck, exists strictly between $50,000 and $60,000. It sounds incredibly neat and logical on paper.
It looks beautiful when drawn on a whiteboard.
hmm
But in the unpredictable trenches of real-world bargaining, elite negotiators consider ZOOPay A to be practically useless.
Why is a logical framework useless?
Because ZOOPay operates on the fatally flawed assumption that human beings are Homo economicus, perfectly rational, calculating machines devoid of emotion. It assumes both parties will act strictly in their best mathematical interest.
Which we never do.
Right. We are not rational machines. We are intensely emotional creatures wrapped in a thin veneer of logic. Veteran negotiators do not waste time searching for a rational mathematical overlap. They manipulate the emotional architecture of the room. And the primary weapon they use to shatter rationality is the extreme anchor.
The extreme anchor. Delivering an initial opening offer so utterly ridiculous that it completely unmoors the counterpart from their logical foundation.
Exactly. It is designed to be a psychological shock to the central nervous system. If you are not trained to recognize and absorb an extreme anchor, your brain will betray you.
You'll just fold.
Yes. You will panic, abandon your carefully planned strategy, and instantly leap to your absolute maximum limit merely to make the crushing discomfort of the insult go away.
The author references what I like to call the Mike Tyson rule. Mike Tyson famously summarized combat by saying, "Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth." In the context of a negotiation, that extreme anchor is the punch to the mouth.
The physiological reaction is identical. Let's look at the neuroscience. When someone throws a massively insulting number at you, your amygdala, the primitive fear center of your brain, interprets it as a threat to your survival.
So you literally freeze up.
Yes, it triggers a flood of cortisol and adrenaline. Your prefrontal cortex, which handles logic and complex reasoning, literally powers down. You experience a measurable drop in cognitive processing ability. You become temporarily less intelligent. Yet counterintuitively, a master negotiator actually desires the opponent to throw the first punch.
Wait, let me stop you there, because that contradicts the oldest cliche in bargaining. I have always been told that whoever names a price first loses. Why would I want them to throw a haymaker at me?
You invite them to go first because you are desperate for information. You want to see their hand. The opening number, even if it is an absurd anchor, reveals valuable data about their mindset, their flexibility, and their strategy.
Ah, I see.
The secret is not avoiding the punch. The secret is developing the psychological calluses to take the punch without suffering a concussion.
Okay, walk me through the mechanics of surviving the punch. If I sit down to negotiate a $10,000 consulting contract and the client looks me dead in the eye and says, "Our budget for this project is $2,000, my immediate biological reaction is a cocktail of intense anger, panic, and an overwhelming urge to yell, "Are you out of your mind?"
Right, which is exactly what they want.
So how do I weather that storm without losing the deal?
The absolute most critical rule is do not bid against yourself. Do not allow your panic to formulate a rapid, discounted counteroffer just to break the tension. You must absorb the energy and deflect the anchor.
Deflect it how?
You maintain a calm, almost curious demeanor, and you deploy a calibrated question. You look at them and ask softly, how am I supposed to accept that? Or perhaps, what exactly are we trying to accomplish here today?
You're catching their ridiculous number and tossing it gently back into their lap as a puzzle for them to solve.
Precisely. You shift the cognitive burden back to them. Another highly effective deflection strategy is to immediately pivot to non-monetary terms. You construct a conversational detour around the radioactive number.
What does that sound like?
You might say, with genuine encouragement, let's put the pricing discussion on the shelf for a brief moment. Let's talk about what the operational timeline would need to look like to make this a successful partnership. Or what additional resources could your team provide to offset a lower fee structure?
Oh, that's smart.
You are frantically sponging up structural information while allowing the emotional shockwave of the $2,000 anchor to dissipate harmlessly.
Okay, I see the value in taking the punch to gather data. But what happens if the opponent is equally skilled? What if they are terrified of anchoring and they aggressively maneuver the conversation to force me to name a price first? If extreme anchoring is so neurologically devastating, Shouldn't I be terrified of going first and locking myself into a bad position?
It is a valid fear. If you find yourself cornered and compelled to throw the first number, there is a brilliant tactical evasion you can employ. You can deploy a massive anchor to set the psychological ceiling, but you avoid tethering yourself to it by attributing the number to a third party.
That is incredibly sneaky. Give me a concrete example of how to attribute an anchor.
The source material provides a perfect illustration. The author was consulting for a large hospital chain, and the executives were aggressively pressuring him to name his daily rate first. He knew that if he named his actual rate, they would immediately try to chop it in half.
Right.
He did not want to lock himself into a defensive posture, so he leaned back and casually observed, well, if you hire a consultant from Harvard Business School, they're going to charge you $2,500 a day per student.
Ah, listen closely to the phrasing. He did not say, I charge $2,500. He explicitly stated that Harvard charges that amount.
Exactly. He successfully dropped a monstrous anchor into the middle of the boardroom. He instantly recalibrated their entire psychological expectation of what consulting services cost. The $2,500 number is now echoing in their brains.
But he's not bound by it?
Nope. Because he did not claim the number as his own, he didn't commit to it. He retained total flexibility while letting the extreme baseline float in the air.
I want to introduce another crucial tool here because it pairs perfectly with deflecting anchors. The text discusses mislabeling. What is a mislabel, and how do I use it when I've just been punched in the mouth?
So a mislabel is an intentional, calculated misstatement of the counterpart's position, designed specifically to trigger their natural human urge to correct you. People love to correct others. It makes them feel authoritative.
Oh, absolutely.
If someone throws a terrible anchor at you, instead of arguing, you can thoughtfully say, it seems like you have absolutely zero flexibility on the budget for this quarter. They will immediately jump to correct the record.
No, we have some flexibility.
Exactly. They might say, well, it's not that we have zero flexibility, but the discretionary fund is locked until Q3. Boom. You just extracted a vital piece of strategic data, the existence and timeline of a discretionary fund, simply by being intentionally wrong.
The psychology of correction is so powerful. Let's observe all these defensive tactics operating together in a high-stress environment. I want to examine the anecdote regarding Farouk, the MBA student.
Oh, the legendary Dubai trip negotiation. It is a masterpiece of absorbing an anchor and methodically fighting back.
The context is that Farouk is tasked with organizing a massive, prestigious alumni networking event in Dubai for his fellow Georgetown MBA students. However, the planning has hit a critical financial wall. He is short on funding.
Very short.
He calculates that he needs exactly $600 to secure the venue and make the event viable. His final desperate option is to petition the dean of the business school. He secures a meeting, walks into her office, and begins passionately pitching how the Dubai event will elevate the Georgetown global brand. But before he can even reach the crescendo of his pitch, the dean interrupts and throws a devastating left hook.
The extreme low ball anchor, delivered by an authority figure which amplifies the psychological shock.
Yeah, she looks at him and says, Farouk, it sounds like a wonderful initiative. However, university funds are exceptionally tight this year, and I can authorize absolutely no more than $300.
Boom, a direct hit. He needs $600 to survive. She drops an immovable anchor at exactly half that amount.
The overwhelming instinct for a student facing the dean is to panic, abandon the $600 goal, and plead, Dean, could you please just stretch to $400?
But Farouk is a trained negotiator.
Right.
He takes the punch square in the jaw, and he does not fold. He doesn't bid against himself. First, he employs deference to acknowledge her constraints, but he effectively rejects the offer without ever uttering the confrontational word no.
Right.
He says, Dean, that is an incredibly generous offer given your strict budget limits, but I'm not sure how that amount would help us achieve a reception worthy of the Georgetown brand. And then, having deflected her punch, he throws a massive counter anchor of his own. He says, I actually have a very high amount in my head. $1,000 is what we need to execute this properly.
Analyze his framing there. I have a very high amount in my head. He provides a split-second verbal warning that a shock is imminent.
Exactly. This slight cushion prevents her amygdala from completely hijacking her brain. Yet the sheer size of the $1,000 number immediately obliterates her $300 ceiling. He has forcefully reset the mathematical parameters of the entire room.
And the counter anchor generates immediate movement. The dean responds, "That is severely out of my range. However, I will authorize $500.
Let's pause and appreciate the velocity of that shift. He walked in needing 600. She anchored at 300. In a single calculated exchange, he forced her to jump to 500.
He is now agonizingly close. He is merely $100 away from his survival number. The internal temptation to just surrender, accept the 500, and figure out how to cut corners on the catering must have been overwhelming.
Oh, in his debrief, Farouk admits he was intensely tempted to fold. A $100 shortfall wasn't entirely catastrophic, but he remembered his training regarding the curse of aiming low and settling early. He maintains his discipline.
So what does he do?
He acknowledges that the 500 gets him closer to reality, but counters with $850.
Notice he is still dropping anchors significantly above his actual $600 requirement. He is pulling her upward.
Yes. The dean begins to exhibit frustration. She pushes back harder, stating that she has already conceded more than she initially intended and insists that 500 is a highly reasonable contribution. Farouk remains unflappable. He praises her generosity again, but counters with, "How about $775?
And at this juncture, the dynamic shifts completely. The dean smiles. She recognizes the sophisticated game being played. She leans forward and says, "Farouk, you clearly have a very specific number in your head that you are trying to reach. Just tell it to me."
This is the moment of maximum danger. If he simply blurts out 600, he reveals his floor, and she will likely try to split the difference at 550. This is where Farouk lands the plane with absolute elegance.
He does not say 600. And he does not demand the 750 he was just floating. He utilizes an oddly, almost bizarrely specific number. He looks her in the eye and says, "I need $737.50 to make this work, and you are my absolute last stop for funding."
$737.50. We will unpack the deep psychological resonance of precise numbers shortly, but observe the immediate impact. It does not sound like a negotiation tactic.
No, it sounds like a rigid mathematical truth derived from a complex spreadsheet calculated down to the final penny. It carries undeniable gravity.
And the dean actually laughs out loud. She praises his tenacity and clarity of purpose. 2 days later, Farouk receives an official email stating the dean's office has authorized a transfer of $750.
He walked into that office needing 600, absorbed a crushing low ball of 300 straight to the face, and walked out with 750.
It is a triumph of emotional regulation. He did not allow the extreme anchor to hijack his nervous system. He absorbed the impact, deflected the energy, and methodically reshaped reality.
That is a phenomenal masterclass in defensive resilience. But as we progress to the next phase of our toolkit, we must confront a harsh reality. Defense is not always sufficient. There are scenarios where a negotiation stalls completely, the counterpart is being stubbornly rigid, irrational, or borderline abusive, and the conversation is paralyzed.
Exactly. In those critical moments, you cannot just deflect. You have to understand how to go on the offensive. You must know how to throw a punch.
The author acknowledges that this is a difficult gear to find for many people. If your natural profile is the accommodator, if you are intrinsically wired to please, people going on the offensive will feel deeply unnatural, perhaps even toxic. But as the text quotes from a Danish proverb, you must bake with the flour you have. You must cultivate a repertoire of assertive tools to ensure you are not victimized.
And the most controversial yet potent tool in that assertive repertoire is the strategic deployment of anger.
That sounds like playing with dynamite. Introducing anger into a tense financial discussion usually results in someone screaming, slamming their laptop shut, and storming out of the room.
It carries immense risk. However, fascinating empirical research from INSEAD and Stanford University illuminates the utility of rage. Their studies demonstrated that calculated expressions of anger can actually expand a negotiator's leverage and significantly increase their final financial take.
How does that mechanically work? Why doesn't it just blow up the deal?
Anger communicates profound passion and unwavering conviction. It acts as a visceral signal to the opposition that you have absolutely reached your breaking point. It can compel them to surrender concessions rapidly simply because they possess an overwhelming psychological desire to de-escalate the conflict and restore harmony.
But there's a catch, right?
A massive one. The Stanford researchers discovered a catastrophic difference in outcomes between genuine anger and fabricated anger.
What is the outcome if I just decide to put on a theatrical performance? Like I pound my fist on the table, I widen my eyes, I feign deep moral outrage, but internally I'm perfectly calm and just faking it for leverage.
Fabricating outrage will backfire with devastating consequences. The data shows that disingenuous displays of unfelt anger immediately incinerate trust. Human beings possess an incredibly sophisticated subconscious radar for detecting fraudulent emotion via microexpressions.
We know when we're being played.
Exactly. If your counterpart senses that you are performing, that you are manipulating them with fake rage, it triggers intense, intractable resentment. They will dig their heels into the ground and refuse to concede a single inch, purely out of spite.
So the frustration must be entirely authentic.
It must be genuine, but, and here's the razor-thin tightrope you must walk, it must be hyper-controlled. Because genuine anger, while conveying authenticity, simultaneously floods your brain with cortisol, reducing your own cognitive agility.
You stop thinking clearly.
Yes. If you lose control, your peripheral vision narrows. You lose the ability to spot creative solutions. You might successfully bully the other side into a begrudging concession through fear, but that inevitably breeds toxic resentment, ensuring the implementation of the contract will be sabotaged down the road.
How is it possible to be genuinely angry but retain total control?
The absolute secret is trajectory. The anger must be relentlessly focused and directed exclusively at the proposal and never, under any circumstances, at the person.
I love the analogy used to conceptualize this. It operates exactly like a referee throwing a yellow penalty flag during an American football game. When a defender commits a late hit, the referee throws the flag to indicate that specific action was a violation of the rules, resulting in a 15-yard penalty. The referee is attacking the behavior. He is not ejecting the player from the stadium and screaming, "You are a fundamentally evil human being who deserves to be in prison."
That analogy perfectly captures the dynamic. You do not look at the counterpart and yell, "You are insulting my intelligence with this garbage offer." That demonizes the human being, and their ego will demand retaliation. Instead, you take a slow, deep breath, permit a controlled measure of your genuine frustration to color your vocal tone, and you state firmly and decisively, "I simply do not see how a proposal structured like that could ever possibly work."
The text refers to this maneuver as strategic umbrage, taking deliberate, well-timed offense to jolt your counterpart out of their complacent or rigid thinking.
Precisely. And a fascinating secondary study from Columbia University revealed that individuals who are on the receiving end of properly executed strategic umbrage frequently concluded the negotiation feeling that they had been overly aggressive. The umbrage effectively induced a sense of guilt, causing them to voluntarily retreat from their demands.
However, the author issues a vital warning to the listener regarding this exact tactic. You must remain vigilant so you do not fall victim to strategic umbrage yourself. If you present a demonstrably fair market rate offer and the other party suddenly erupts in highly theatrical offense, recognize the play being run against you.
Right, don't just cave in.
Exactly. Do not instantly surrender your position just because someone threw a yellow penalty flag on the field.
Maintain your composure and evaluate the data, not the theatrics. Now, alongside strategic umbrage, there is another brilliantly offensive mechanism that operates on pure paradox, the reverse why question.
This concept genuinely broke my brain initially because it appears to directly contradict a foundational rule established earlier in the text. Earlier, the author explicitly commands the reader to avoid asking why questions because the word why acts as an instant trigger for defensiveness.
Yes, it does.
If I ask a colleague, "Why did you format the report that way?" they immediately feel accused and compelled to justify their existence. It feels like an attack. So why is the author suddenly advocating for its use as an offensive weapon?
The contradiction is intentional. You are actively seeking to trigger that hardwired defensiveness, but you are performing psychological judo to redirect that defensive energy to serve your own agenda. Use the reverse why to coerce the counterpart into aggressively defending your position.
I need to understand the mechanics of this. Walk me through a hypothetical script.
Imagine you're an independent software consultant trying to win a lucrative contract away from a massive established competitor. Instead of sitting in the boardroom and reciting a desperate laundry list of reasons why you are superior, you invert the dynamic.
What do you say?
You lean across the table, look the executive in the eye, and ask, "Why would you ever consider doing business with my boutique firm? Why would you possibly take the risk of abandoning your current supplier? They are a massive corporation with a great track record."
That feels incredibly reckless. You are practically handing them a loaded gun and begging them to shoot down your proposal. You're inviting them to say, "You make a fantastic point. You are too small. We shouldn't hire you. Meeting adjourned."
It feels terrifying, but it exploits a profound neurological reflex. By asking, Why would you choose me?
Mm.
You activate their innate compulsion to answer a direct why question. You coax their brain into vocalizing the underlying reasons they granted you the meeting in the first place.
Ah, they have to defend their own choice to talk to you.
Exactly. Their brain is forced to generate the arguments for your side. They will inevitably respond, well, we are talking to you because the massive corporation is incredibly slow, their customer service is severely degraded, and we are desperately looking for the innovative agility that your smaller firm provides.
Wow.
Suddenly, they're not just agreeing with you, they are actively pitching your value proposition to themselves.
It is the ultimate manifestation of psychological judo. You use their own momentum to flip them onto the mat.
Exactly. Another vital tool for asserting boundaries without resorting to hostility is the disciplined use of I messages.
That terminology sounds exactly like the scripts my couples therapist gave me. I feel statements.
They are utilized in therapy for the exact same reason they are utilized in corporate hostage negotiations. They de-escalate aggressive momentum without surrendering ground. When a counterpart is behaving unproductively or attempting to bulldoze you, you must hit the emergency pause button. You deploy the precise formula. I feel blank when you blank because blank.
So instead of yelling, you keep changing the terms of the delivery, I would say, I feel incredibly frustrated when you repeatedly introduce new delivery timelines because we already formally agreed that the schedule was finalized.
Yes, the strategic use of the pronoun I forces their attention away from the conflict and onto your internal emotional experience just long enough to interrupt their aggressive rhythm. It acts as a conversational circuit breaker.
But the delivery has to be right?
Delivery is paramount. It must be spoken with a cool, clinical level tone. If you inject anger into an I message, it ceases to be a boundary and simply becomes the opening salvo of a shouting match.
Serving as the bedrock beneath all of these offensive maneuvers, the strategic umbrage, the reverse whys, the I messages is the ultimate non-negotiable boundary, the absolute core of assertive bargaining. Zero neediness.
The ready-to-walk mindset.
The author distills this into a powerful mantra. No deal is fundamentally better than a bad deal. If you are sitting at a table and you internally feel that you are incapable of uttering the word no, if you need the deal to survive, you have already taken yourself hostage. You must possess crystalline clarity regarding your absolute bottom line, and you must be psychologically prepared to stand up, shake hands, and walk out the door.
Desperation carries a distinct olfactory signature in a negotiation room. If the opposition smells that you cannot walk away, they will exploit you without mercy.
We have meticulously assembled a formidable array of tools. We have defensive armor, learning how to absorb and deflect extreme anchors. We possess offensive weaponry, utilizing strategic umbrage and the reverse why. We understand the behavioral psychology of the analyst, accommodator, and assertive profiles. Now, the time has come to synthesize every single fragment of this theory into a legendary, battle-tested, hyper-efficient system.
This is the operational culmination of the entire deep dive.
Let's transition into the architecture of the Ackerman model. The historical origins of this methodology read like the script of an espionage thriller. Where did this system originate?
The Ackerman model is named in honor of Mike Ackerman. He was a former CIA operative who eventually founded a highly specialized kidnap-for-ransom consulting firm based out of Miami. During the author's tenure as the lead international kidnapping negotiator for the FBI, he collaborated extensively with Ackerman's operatives.
The author eventually refined and deployed this exact mathematical system to handle the epidemic of kidnappings in Haiti. We are talking about literal life and death stakes, with heavily armed artels demanding ransoms between $15,000 and $75,000. He utilized this precise model to consistently drive those demands down to settlements under $5,000.
Which is an astonishing statistical achievement. And to validate its application beyond the criminal underworld, the author later presented the complete mechanics of the Ackerman model to Howard Reifa, the legendary negotiation professor at Harvard Business School.
What did he think?
Reifa analyzed the structure and definitively concluded, yes, this psychological sequence will dictate the outcome in virtually any environment. It is not exclusively designed for neutralizing kidnappers. It is a universal algorithm for buying vehicles, reducing commercial rent, or securing multi-million-dollar corporate acquisitions.
Let's break down the Ackerman model organically. Let's say I am preparing to negotiate the purchase of a piece of commercial real estate. I have done my market analysis, and I have determined that my absolute maximum budget, my dream price, is $100,000. How do I begin? Do I walk in and offer 80,000, hoping to meet in the middle?
If you do that, you are abandoning the system. Step 1 is formalizing your target price, which you have done, $100,000. Step 2 requires you to calculate and deliver an opening offer at exactly 65% of your target price. So your opening offer is $65,000.
65%. That is not just a lowball. That borders on offensive. If the property is vaguely worth 100,000, offering 65,000 is going to feel like a slap in the face to the seller.
That is precisely the intention. It is the extreme anchor we discussed previously. It is engineered to deliver a profound psychological shock to their system, instantly dropping their expectations and inducing that localized fight-or-flight response. You are violently disrupting their equilibrium.
Okay, assuming they don't immediately throw me out of their office, I have anchored at 65,000. They inevitably push back and demand more. What is my next move?
Step 3 dictates that you have pre-calculated 3 subsequent, highly specific counteroffers. You will raise your offer in mathematically decreasing increments. Your first raise takes you to 85% of your target, so 85,000.
Okay.
Your second raise takes you to 95%.
95,000.
And your final raise brings you to your 100% target, which is the full 100,000.
I need to pause and challenge the logic of step 3 because it feels counterintuitive. I go from 65K up to 85K, then up to 95K, and finally 100K. If I'm sitting across from the seller and I continuously yield ground and offer more money, but the size of my concessions keeps shrinking, doesn't that make me appear incredibly weak? Aren't I just slowly bleeding out capital while they hold their ground?
On a superficial level, it might feel like bleeding. But the psychological genius operating beneath the surface is profound. The mathematically diminishing increments are actively convincing the counterpart that they are violently squeezing every last drop of resources out of you.
Like trying to squeeze blood from a stone.
Exactly. Analyze the mathematics from the seller's perspective. First, you concede a massive $20,000 jump from 65 to 85. The seller's ego flares. They think, excellent, I have broken his resolve, he's moving rapidly.
They feel powerful.
Yes. After another grueling round of debate, you concede again, but this time it's only a $10,000 jump from 85 to 95. The seller's brain registers the deceleration. Okay, his momentum is slowing, he must be encountering friction. Finally, after exhausting negotiations, you offer a meager $5,000 jump to hit your final $100,000 target.
Ah, I see it now.
The rapidly decreasing velocity of your concessions tells a compelling, physical story of a buyer who has literally scraped the bottom of their bank account.
That makes perfect sense. The math creates a narrative of exhaustion.
But here's the most astonishing psychological twist. This agonizing process actually elevates the counterpart's self-esteem. Behavioral economists have proven that individuals who are forced to fight tooth and nail for a series of diminishing concessions actually feel significantly better about the final agreement than individuals who are simply handed a single, generous, fair offer at the very beginning of the meeting.
Wait, really?
Yes, they feel like brilliant tacticians. They feel victorious because they believe they extracted maximum value.
So they're walking away happier even if the final dollar amount is lower than what they originally demanded. The sheer difficulty of the process validates their ego.
Precisely. Now, step 4 governs how you navigate between these mathematical raises. You do not just rapid-fire the numbers like an auctioneer. You must utilize profound empathy. You deploy your calibrated questions, and you find creative ways to say no without using the word, forcing the counterpart to issue a counteroffer before you ever reveal your next increment.
You make them bleed for every single raise.
Exactly. Which brings us to step 5, which involves the final 100% number. You reach your absolute limit, but the rule states you cannot use a round number. You can't offer $100,000. You have to offer something like $99,837.
This dives into the psychological weight of the $1 increment. The author illustrates this perfectly with the story of a Haitian kidnapping. He meticulously guides the family through the Ackerman steps, the 65% anchor, the calibrated questions, the diminishing raises, and for the final offer, he instructs them to drop a bizarre, highly precise, non-round number.
Yes, and the head of the Miami FBI field office calls him the following morning, howling with disbelief, asking, how in the world did you settle a hostage situation for exactly $4,751? Why wouldn't you just round it to $4,750?
And that is the logical question. Why does one single dollar matter in a life or death scenario?
It matters because of the deeply hardwired pricing psychology that dictates modern commerce. Think about walking through a grocery store. You will never find a box of cereal priced at $5 flat. It is universally priced at $4.99.
Right.
Rationally, our prefrontal cortex knows that a 1-cent difference is mathematically irrelevant to our net worth. We recognize it as a transparent marketing gimmick. Yet the data proves it successfully manipulates human purchasing behavior every single time.
It fundamentally alters the brain's perception of the integer. When you present a round number like 5,000 or 100,000, it sounds arbitrary. It sounds like a placeholder or a lazy estimate. The counterpart subconsciously assumes you have hidden reserves you simply aren't mentioning.
But when you declare an offer of $4,751, it imbues that number with undeniable, almost intimidating credibility. It projects the illusion that you have literally audited your finances down to the final available penny, and the well is completely dry. It acts as a brick wall that stops the negotiation dead.
And finally, step 6. When you deliver that precise, non-round final number, you must simultaneously throw in a non-monetary item, something the counterpart probably has zero interest in acquiring. A piece of used equipment, a slight adjustment to the delivery terms, or an extended warranty.
Right. It serves as the definitive physical signal that your cash reserves are utterly depleted, and you are resorting to bartering scraps to make the deal survive. It is the ultimate punctuation mark on the Ackerman sentence.
To witness the symphony of all these tactics operating in perfect harmony, we must examine the story of Mishery. Mishery was a Georgetown MBA student who received the one piece of correspondence every renter dreads: the lease renewal notice demanding a massive rent increase.
A universally stressful scenario where the landlord seemingly holds all the leverage.
Mishery was currently paying $1,850 a month for his apartment. The property manager's email casually informed him that to renew his lease for 10 months, his rent would skyrocket to $2,100. If he committed to 12 months, they would generously lower it to $2,000. Mishery desperately wanted to stay in the building, but the increase was financially impossible.
The standard reaction from an average tenant is to either accept defeat and pack their boxes, or angrily demand the property manager freeze the rent, which is a confrontational tactic that almost never succeeds.
But Mishery had internalized the author's course. He remembered the foundational mantra, "You fall to your highest level of preparation." He begins by executing rigorous analytical research. He scours the neighborhood and identifies comparable apartments renting between $1,800 and $1,950, though he intellectually admits to himself that his current building boasts superior amenities.
Okay, so he has his data.
Right. He audits his personal finances and establishes his absolute unyielding target price, $1,830. That is his Ackerman step 1.
Excellent. He has planted his flag. He knows his destination.
He schedules an in-person meeting with the rental agent. He initiates the interaction with heavy empathy. He expresses his genuine love for the building, highlights his flawless payment history, and laments how heartbreaking it would be to relocate. The agent enthusiastically agrees, attempting to leverage that built rapport to justify the exorbitant new price.
Plastic move.
Mishery politely introduces his market research regarding the cheaper apartments nearby. The agent immediately counters with, "Yes, but our building offers premium amenities they lack." The board is set. Mishery takes a breath and deploys his step 2 extreme anchor. He looks at the agent and asks, "Would $1,730 a month for a year lease sound fair to you?"
Wow. $1,730. He is currently paying $1,850. The landlord demanded an increase to $2,000, and Mishery audaciously requests a significant rent reduction. The sheer audacity of the anchor is breathtaking.
The agent literally laughs out loud at the absurdity of the number. He states categorically that there is absolutely no way management could authorize a figure so drastically below market value. But Mishery is expecting the punch. He doesn't panic or apologize. He smoothly deflects by pivoting to a calibrated question. He leans in and asks, "Okay, please help me understand. How exactly do you price lease renewals in this building?"
Brilliant. He transfers the cognitive burden back to the agent. He forces the agent to explain the internal mechanics, shifting the dynamic from a confrontation into an educational discussion.
The agent begins lecturing on the economics of supply and demand. Mishery actively listens, then weaponizes that exact data. He gently points out that if he vacates, the unit will likely sit empty for at least 1 month. costing the landlord $2,000 in immediate lost revenue, plus the operational costs of repainting and deep cleaning for a new tenant.
Oh, that's good.
Having planted that seed of anxiety, Masheri executes his first diminishing raise. He offers $1,790.
Let's track the mathematics.
Yeah.
His anchor was $1,730. His new offer is $1,790. He just made a concession of $60.
The agent pauses, the laughter gone. He replies, "Your number is still exceptionally low. Give me some time to run these calculations and we can meet later." 5 days elapse. They reconvene. The agent sits down and announces, "I reviewed the numbers with management. I can offer you a renewed rate of $1,950.
Observe the shift. The agent has retreated from $2,100, past the $2,000 floor, all the way down to $1,950. Masheri is systematically dismantling their position.
Masheri praises the agent's flexibility and then utilizes a mislabel to extract more dialogue, followed by rejecting the offer without saying no. He says, "How am I supposed to accept $1,950 when I can walk 3 blocks and rent a similar unit for $1,800?
The calibrated question strikes again.
He then sighs heavily, projecting deep internal conflict, and delivers his second diminishing raise. He says, "I initially stretched my budget from $1,730 up to $1,790. I will push myself to the absolute limit and offer $1,810.
First jump,
No.
$60. Second jump, only $20. He is physically illustrating the exhaustion of his financial resources.
The agent shakes his head. "That is still below the neighborhood average. I simply cannot get that approved." Masheri realizes it is time for the final Ackerman sequence. The theatricality he employs here is spectacular. He falls completely silent. He asks the agent to borrow a pen and a blank sheet of paper. He sits at the agent's desk, furrowing his brow, engaging in an agonizing performance of executing complex, fake mathematical calculations.
He is providing a visual manifestation of the struggle. He's showing the agent the excruciating effort required to scrape the absolute bottom of the barrel.
Finally, Masheri looks up, exhausted, and delivers his ultimate non-round limit. "I ran all my numbers, and the absolute maximum I can possibly afford to pay is $1,829.
$1,829. A masterpiece of precision.
The agent stares at the number, bobs his head in slow realization, and says, "Wow, $1,829. You are incredibly precise. You must be an accountant." Masheri is, in fact, not an accountant. But the agent sighs and concludes, "Listen, we truly value your desire to remain in the building. I think we can make this work." The landlord officially accepts $1,829.
It is a breathtaking execution of the entire curriculum. Masheri seamlessly integrated the decreasing Ackerman increments, the psychological shock of the extreme anchor, the undeniable weight of the non-round number, rigorous analytical preparation, strategic mislabeling, and the art of refusing an offer without ever utilizing the confrontational word no.
He secured a rent discount in an environment where the landlord initiated the interaction by demanding a $250 monthly increase.
It is nothing short of incredible.
And Masheri's success brings us to the final synthesis of our deep dive today. We have traversed an immense psychological landscape. We began by observing the sheer agonizing power of intentional silence inside a car dealership, learning how to turn off the engine and toss the keys out the window rather than playing a destructive game of chicken.
We learned the critical importance of diagnosing whether the individual across the table is an analyst requiring data, an accommodator requiring relationship, or an assertive requiring validation.
We mastered the neuroscience of absorbing an extreme anchor straight to the amygdala and deflecting it with calibrated questions. We explored the tightrope walk of utilizing strategic umbrage without incinerating trust. And finally, we witnessed the sheer mechanical ruthlessness of the Ackerman model.
And weaving through every single one of these aggressive tactics, there is one foundational, unyielding philosophy that must remain central to your mindset, or none of this architecture will survive long-term.
What is that core philosophy?
You must never, under any circumstances, view the human being sitting across the table as your enemy.
Even when they're hurling insulting anchors and attempting to squeeze every dollar out of my pocket.
Especially in those moments. Our culture possesses a deeply toxic reflex to demonize individuals. In our political discourse, in our entertainment, and certainly in corporate culture. We operate under the delusion that if we simply destroy or eliminate the person, the problem will vanish. But the human being is never the problem. The unsolved issue is the problem.
The person is not the problem. The unsolved issue is the problem. That completely reorients the dynamic.
It's a massive paradigm shift. If you fixate your energy relentlessly on defeating the issue, you circumvent the emotional escalations that destroy deals. You preserve the collaborative bond, which is the absolute prerequisite for any durable resolution. Even when you are engaged in a bare-knuckle, Ackerman-style brawl over a final dollar amount, you must remember that you are partnering with the person across the desk to assassinate the unsolved issue sitting between you.
I think that is a profound truth. And as we conclude, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final provocative concept to examine in your own life. Everything we have unpacked today, the extreme anchors, the psychological weight of the $1 increment, the reverse why question has been framed exclusively around the pursuit of financial capital. We have focused on the clash for cash, cars, commercial rent, consulting contracts.
The traditional arenas of high-stakes bargaining.
Exactly, but consider the broader implications. What if you extracted this exact same psychological architecture and applied it to the non-monetary negotiations that dictate your daily existence?
Oh, that opens up a fascinating territory.
Think about the domestic friction in your life. Could you utilize the methodology of diminishing concessions and precise, non-round numbers to negotiate the allocation of household chores, the distribution of emotional labor, or childcare responsibilities with a spouse or a roommate?
That's a great question.
If you find yourself in a recurring Sunday afternoon argument regarding who is responsible for cleaning the kitchen, could you deploy an extreme anchor regarding your availability and then slowly concede down to a highly specific, non-round schedule of duties? All without your partner ever realizing they were just maneuvered through a sophisticated hostage negotiation framework.
Does the Ackerman model dictate who takes out the trash on a Tuesday night?
Yeah.
It's a fascinating proposition to consider.
It certainly transforms the landscape of a casual argument in the living room.
It absolutely does. Because ultimately, as we established at the very beginning of this journey, human interaction is never a clean, logical, mathematical equation. It is a chaotic, emotionally charged riptide. And you are swimming in those unpredictable waters every single day, whether you acknowledge it or not.
The only variable you control is whether you will allow the unseen currents to drag you under, or if you will finally learn how to read the water. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Take these tools, maintain your composure, and go uncover the riptide.